All right, so today we're going to be doing a deep dive on Marguerite Daisies, but through a pretty unique lens, I'd say. You sent us this blog post by Ang, who is a software engineer, but he also seems to have like a pretty serious green thumb. His website is fascinating. It's this mix of tech talk and then pretty much everything else you can think of. Fish keeping, guitar, even dieting tips. It's called keyandmeng.org. And in one of his posts, it's called Notes on Gardening, Part 427, the cheerful Marguerite Daisy, Argyranthemum frutescens. He talks about his love for these like simple and charming flowers.
Yeah, what's really interesting to me about that is this juxtaposition of somebody who's, so deep in the world of code, finding this kind of solace in something that seems so simple like daisies. Would you say that that kind of speaks to like a broader trend at all, this desire to like counterbalance our tech-saturated lives?
Well, definitely. I mean, I love my gadgets, but there's something about getting your hands dirty in the garden that's just like so grounding. But why daisies specifically? Ang actually mentions that he's really drawn to flowers with like simple floral patterns, and the roundness of them evokes this sense of like cheerful sentimentality for him.
There's actually a psychological aspect to that. Round shapes tend to evoke these feelings of harmony and comfort, a sense of completion. So perhaps for someone like Ang who's dealing with like the complexities of code all day, the visual simplicity of a daisy is almost like meditative in a way.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's
But
not even just about like pretty flowers. It's like the whole visual experience, like the feeling that it evokes.
yeah,
Now, Ang isn't just like waxing poetic about daisies here. He also gets into some of the real world gardening challenges that he's facing with propagation.
yeah, with seed propagation specifically. He mentions that he generally actually prefers to start from seed because it allows him to witness that entire plant life cycle. But he's been having some trouble with the daisies, and he's actually switching to cuttings.
Okay, so for those of us who maybe haven't gone down the seed starting rabbit hole, what exactly is the difference between these two methods? And like, why might someone prefer one over the other?
Well, seed propagation is basically starting a plant from,
Mhm.
as you might guess, a seed. It's like the natural way, watching that tiny seed sprout and grow. Cuttings, on the other hand, involve taking a piece of an existing plant, like a
Yeah.
stem, and encouraging it to develop roots. So you're essentially like cloning the parent plant.
Oh, okay. So with seeds, you get that full like circle of life thing. But with cuttings, you're basically just like getting a head start. Is that why Ang might be struggling with the daisies from seed? Like, are they just trickier to start that way?
There could be a few factors at play there. Seed germination can be, it's a
Yeah.
very delicate dance. Everything from like the age of the seeds to
Yeah.
temperature,
Yeah.
moisture levels, even the soil composition can have a huge impact on your success rate.
So he could be battling like old seeds or the wrong soil mix. Who knows? But what about cuttings then? Are they like a foolproof method?
Not necessarily. Some plants are just much easier to propagate from cuttings than others. And even with like the right conditions, it can be a bit of a trial and error process.
Ah, so even experienced gardeners face challenges sometimes. It's good to remember that gardening isn't always about like instant gratification, right? There's patience and experimentation involved.
Oh, absolutely. And that's part of the beauty of it, You're working with nature,
Mm.
not against it. There's a learning curve there, a collaboration.
Okay, so back to Ang and his daisy dilemma. If he's having all this trouble with seeds,
Yeah.
is switching to cuttings like the right move? What advice would you give him?
Well, it sounds like he's at least open to experimenting, which is great. If seed propagation is proving to be consistently difficult, then
Mhm.
cuttings are a perfectly valid alternative. I'd suggest that he maybe do a little research on like techniques specific to Marguerite daisies and be prepared for a little bit more trial and error.
So patience is key. And perhaps a bit of online research wouldn't hurt either. It's interesting how even with all of our technological advancements, when it comes to gardening, sometimes it's about going back to basics, observing
Yeah.
and adapting.
Yeah. It's a humbling reminder that nature often operates on its own timeline, regardless of our human desire for those immediate results.
Speaking of timelines, I think we should shift gears a bit here and talk about what makes these Marguerite daisies so special. Why are they worth all of this effort, both for Ang and for our listeners who might be getting inspired to add them to their own gardens? Ang clearly has like a soft spot for these daisies. He describes them as having this like simple charm, almost an understated elegance. What is it about the Marguerite daisy that sets it apart from like all the other daisies out there?
Well, the Marguerite Daisy, or Argyranthemum frutescens, to be all scientific about it, it actually hails from the Canary Islands. And what sets them apart, I'd say, is the sheer abundance of their blooms. You get these like cheerful white or yellow flowers with a bright yellow center, And then this lovely, like, feathery foliage, it's almost fern-like. Adds a whole other layer of, like, visual interest.
It's funny, Ang actually mentions that visual aspect quite a bit. He talks about how the roundness of the flowers evokes this sense of sentimentality for him. It's almost like he's drawn to their shape as much as their color.
Right, and that actually ties back to what we were discussing earlier about the psychology of shapes. Round shapes often represent like completeness, wholeness.
Yeah.
So perhaps for someone like Ang, who works with the intricate logic of code, there's a sense of visual relief in those simple round blooms.
So it's not just about like a pretty flower. It's about the feeling that it evokes, the sense of peace and tranquility. Now, I'm already picturing these daisies in my own garden. But before I rush off to the nursery, what are some things to keep in mind when growing these? Are they like high maintenance?
Not particularly, they love sunshine. So a spot with full sun to partial shade is ideal. Well-drained soil is crucial. And while they are relatively drought tolerant once established, they do appreciate regular watering, especially during those hot summer months.
Okay, so not too demanding, which makes sense for someone with like a busy life like Ang. Any other care tips that are like specific to Marguerite daisies?
One thing that sets them apart is they really benefit from deadheading. Basically, that's just removing the spent blooms. It encourages the plant to put energy into producing new flowers, so you end up getting a much longer blooming period.
Got it. So a little bit of maintenance goes a long way. It makes me think about Ang's preference for seed propagation and that whole idea of witnessing the entire plant life cycle. Why do you think that resonates so strongly with some gardeners? Is it just about seeing the process, or is there like something deeper at play?
I think there's definitely a deeper satisfaction there for many, and I think Aang captures that sentiment really beautifully in his blog. Witnessing a plant grow from a tiny seed to a mature flowering specimen, it's like a connection to the natural world, to the cycle of life and renewal. There's a sense of wonder, a reminder that even from something so small and seemingly insignificant, something so beautiful and vibrant can emerge.
It's that feeling of potential,
Hmm.
of witnessing the power of nature firsthand. And even if Ang is continuing to face challenges with seed propagation, he's clearly getting so much more out of gardening than just like pretty flowers. It's about connecting with nature on like a much deeper level,
Yeah.
finding a sense of peace and grounding.
Precisely. And that's something I think a lot of people, regardless of their background or profession, can relate to. In a world that's often so fast-paced and demanding, gardening offers this space to like slow down,
Yeah.
observe, and appreciate the simple beauty of the natural world.
It's a good reminder for all of us. Okay, so we've covered quite a bit of ground here. We talked about Ang's unique perspective as a software engineer with a passion for daisies. We delved into the specifics of Marguerite Daisy care. And we even touched on the deeper meaning that many find in gardening. What are some like key takeaways that you'd want our listener to walk away with from this conversation?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that Marguerite daisies are truly a delightful addition to any garden. They bring cheer with their like abundant blooms, and that delicate feathery foliage just adds a touch of elegance.
And don't forget those perfectly round flowers, offering a visual sense of like calm and completeness, almost like a hug from nature. What else?
Remember that both seed propagation and cuttings are valid methods, each with its own challenges and rewards. So if one method isn't working, don't be afraid to experiment and find what suits your style. And most importantly, enjoy the process. Gardening is a journey, not a destination.
It's about embracing the challenges, celebrating the successes, and finding joy in that connection with nature. Ang's experience with his Marguerite daisies perfectly exemplifies that. But I'm curious, you mentioned that Ang prefers seed propagation because it allows him to see that full plant life cycle. What are some other plants that are relatively easy to grow from seed that might offer that same sense of satisfaction?
Well, that's a great question. It's like we're giving our listener a little homework assignment. Expand your gardening horizons. So what are some good like starter plants for those of us who want to try our hand at seed propagation and witness that full journey unfold?
Well, for a real showstopper, you can't go wrong with sunflowers. They're relatively easy to grow from seed,
Yeah.
and they just add such a dramatic presence to the garden.
Yeah, and there's something so mesmerizing about watching a sunflower track the sun throughout the day. It's like having a little piece of living solar technology in your backyard. But what about something with a bit more color? Zinnias are fantastic for that. They come in just this incredible array of vibrant hues, and they're like a magnet for pollinators. Bees and butterflies. You'll have a bustling little ecosystem right in your own garden.
Okay, those are going on my list.
Oh,
What about something edible? Our listener might be inspired to try growing their own food.
herbs are a great starting point for any aspiring food gardener. Many of them are quite easy to grow from seed, and they add so much flavor to your cooking basil chives, dill, all relatively low maintenance and incredibly rewarding.
Oh, I can already smell the fresh pesto. There's nothing quite like using ingredients that you've grown yourself. And for those feeling a bit more adventurous, are there any vegetables that are like beginner-friendly when it comes to seed starting?
Tomatoes and peppers can be a good challenge. For those ready to kind of level up their seed starting game, they do require a bit more care and attention. But the reward of having fresh, homegrown produce is well worth the effort.
Yeah, it's a reminder that gardening can be so much more than just like cultivating plants. It's about cultivating patience, a sense of wonder, and that deeper connection to the natural world.
Beautifully said. And at the end of the day, that's what we hope this deep dive has inspired. A sense of curiosity, a willingness to experiment, and an appreciation for the simple joys of growth, both in the garden and within ourselves.
Eng's passion for his Marguerite daisies, even amidst the propagation struggles, is a perfect example of that. It's about embracing the journey, the ups and the downs, and finding joy in the process.
So to our listener, we encourage you to explore the world of gardening. Whether you start with those cheerful Marguerite daisies, a towering sunflower, or even a pot of fragrant basil, embrace the experience, learn, grow, and most importantly, have fun.
And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to start your own blog, documenting your gardening adventures. Until next time, happy gardening.